All right, good. So I'm going to take my cues from what the county commissioner said about it's not a fad. She didn't know she was teeing me up, but it's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about for a few minutes, which is that local is not a fad because it's really a reflection of where consumers are at. And for a number of reasons that we're going to quickly go into, it's almost like call it a constellation of attributes that people want to see in their food, the connections they want to feel. And so let's just go forward. So what I'm going to talk about today, briefly, is some of the definitions, interpretations of what local food means, some recent statistics, mostly USDA statistics on local food. What is the relationship between the consumer preferences I just mentioned and the rise in demand, and how demand for these attributes, those that are associated with locally grown food, are transforming the retail food industry in particular. Okay, what is local food? Now, many of you may or may not realize that USDA, federal government, does not regulate a definition of local food in any meaningful way. We do for the purposes of administering a few programs, so we've sort of come up with this maximum definition. Less than 400 miles from the origin of the product or within the same state. But effectively, we leave it to jurisdictions and municipalities to define local food for themselves. So say if you have a farmer's market manager, if they have a policy of producer only within a certain area of distribution, they define that because we believe that local is what consumers and communities believe it to be. And we don't want to have a one-size-fits-all approach because that's sort of an antithetical to what local food and local food identity is all about. This is about, and as I'm going to be discussing, it's about transparency and it's about relationship. It's not so much about geography. So for the purposes of understanding some of the statistics you'll see today, just want to point out that when we say local food, we mean direct-to-consumer sales, as you would see in a farmer's market, a CSA, a U-Pick operation, a roadside stand. But we also are talking about wholesale sales increasingly, and they actually represent the majority of sales that we call local. The difference being that it's the portion of product that's grown for the local and supplied to the local market that's branded as local, that appears on your retail shelves as with information about the story of the farm or local origin, or you see on your restaurant menu. And we'll talk about these statistics, which were published in December 2016 by the National Agricultural Statistics Service at USDA, the latest ones that we have publicly. Total in sales in 2015, both direct-to-consumer, intermediated, $8.7 billion. Well, that's larger than some commodities like cotton. We're not talking niche markets anymore. We're talking real business. In some cases, we are really seeing the kind of trajectory that we once saw in the organic market. I'm not really going to go into that, but I think you need to keep that in mind. So we talk about why is this important. Again, as I mentioned before, the largest proportion of revenue is coming from wholesale sales. Certainly, those items are being sold at a somewhat lower price than what they are sold for at direct-to-consumer outlets, but certainly it's made up for by volume. And what we're starting to see is people playing both on the retail side and on the wholesale side at the same time. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So over the past few years, I've tended to start my discussions with this slide because I think that it actually encompasses sort of that bundle of characteristics that I like to think about when talking about local food. People are choosing their food more holistically based on multiple food factors. And what are those? Taste, quality of ingredients, source, where it comes from, nutritional composition, asking who is making their foods and understanding the impact of their purchases or potential impact on the environment and animal welfare. As you all know, news headlines are changing public perception. You know, we're now 10 years past the release of Omnivore's Dilemma. Kind of hard to believe. But, you know, this is now part of our mainstream public consciousness. According to this 2016 survey, nearly a third of Americans had changed their mind about nutrition issues in the previous year. News articles were a top driver of this change. Nearly half of Americans had read an article or a book or watched a documentary about the food system in the past year, and about half of them reported to change their minds about food purchases as a result. Well, that's pretty profound. You may not be able to see this too well. I really put this up for a couple reasons. I wish I had a laser pointer right now, but I don't. I'm just going to run through what are we seeing here. Well, the statistics you see here represent ranks of 4 and 5 on a 5-point scale. So they're either, you know, a fair amount of impact or a great deal of impact. And you've got taste, price, healthfulness, convenience, and sustainability in that order. What I'd like you to notice really is that you're seeing sort of on price, which is the orange, you're seeing a little bit of a downward trend. Of course, it spikes up and down. But relative to other considerations, it's a little bit on a downturn. And what you're seeing with healthfulness and sustainability is a little bit of an upturn. So does price trump all? I think is the question we have to ask ourselves. This is a great one. Also a little difficult to understand, but I think we'll unpack it a bit together. These respondents were asked, in general, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the following statements about the use of modern tools, equipment, and technologies in agriculture? Modern agriculture, A, produces nutritious foods. Answer, strongly agree, 20%. Some would agree, 36%. And it gets worse from there. Groups most likely to agree, age 50 to 80. I'm in that group. What does it say about people younger than 50? Interesting question. Does it produce safe foods? You can see 30% neutral, 30%, some would agree, 20% strongly agree, but the people that aren't sure and strongly disagree, that's creeping up. Produces high quality foods, about the same. But a lot of people sort of in that in-between zone. Is sustainable. Many more, not sure. Somewhat more, strongly disagree. Farms are all still primarily family run. And there, you're sort of all over the place, but lots of confusion. These, and those that are believing it, most likely to agree, tend to skew in the higher age ranges. So what does that say about what is informing the attitudes of our younger consumers and our largest cohort, which are millennials? Okay, reasons why. This is from a Food Marketing Institute report from last year. Reasons why most US food shoppers purchase locally grown products. I will note on the far left, it says, I purchase locally grown products 80% occasionally. So this is routine now. It's 14% always. 6% say different never. So really, we're talking about this is routine decision making these days. Why? Freshness or in season. It tastes good. You got taste 54%. Supports the local economy 65%. Like knowing the source of the product or how it's going to produce 40%. And some others, nutritional value, environmental impact. But think about, these are not niche issues. These are pretty basic issues. And I think they're very much affecting what we're seeing in the marketplace. What might be a surprise to some of you is that this willingness to pay for local tends to span the income spectrum. Now, you're not going to be surprised to see that 95% of single urban households are willing to pay more for local food. Okay, they have more discretionary income. Low-income families, a majority. Senior citizens, 2/3. That's pretty impressive. Okay. That should be local, not local too on the heading. Sorry about that, guys. This is the latest one. Let's see where chefs are these days, because they tend to be forward thinking and visionaries, and they tend to predict or be leading indicators of where the rest of us are focusing later. What are some of the top concepts? Hyper-local, restaurant gardens, house-made items, on-site beer brewing. Sounds good. Number 3, I just highlighted the ones I thought were most related to local. Natural ingredients and clean menus. We'll talk a little about the clean concept in a bit. Environmental sustainability, then locally sourced meat and seafood, locally sourced produce. I should note, this comes from the National Restaurant Association. Local has been on the top of the charts for many years now. The reason that it's only, it used to be number 1 or number 2, now it's only 7 or 8, it's only because it's been there for so long. It's not even trendy anymore. It's just kind of the way we do business. Farm estate branded items. Again, let's go back to nutrition, which we're starting to see, I think, more interest in. A National Grocery Association consumer survey from 2015, 28% of respondents wanted minimal processing, 25% a shorter list of ingredients. 2016 Food and Health Survey, this is the one where you saw the sustainability, nutrition, and taste. Same source. 36% worry about chemicals in their foods. Foods labeled with a health attribute experienced a sales increase of 13% over the previous year versus flat sales for other foods. U.S. Grocery Shopper Trends 2016, Food Marketing Institute, 22% worry the food they eat isn't nutritious enough, and 26% explicitly seek out foods that have been nutritionally enhanced with vitamins or antioxidants or calcium. We're also seeing an increase in fruit and vegetable consumption in general, including, of course, as part of the center of the plate. So, produce sales have really been the star of the supermarket. Between 2010 and 2014, sales rose 21.7%. Supermarket produce sales, generally supermarket sales only rose 9.3%. So essentially a little more than twice as fast. The produce share of supermarket sales then rose from 10.4 to 11.6 in 4 years. Look at per capita consumption. Among baby boomers, an average of 4.4 servings a day. Generation X, 4.7. Millennials, 5.1. I sort of like this quote from the Food Marketing Institute, because I think it really sums it up so well. In a world of shopping options and fast-moving information, consumers see transparency as a shortcut to confidence in a complex food system against a postmodern backdrop of skepticism. Now, does that sound like a millennial quote or what? This is from another survey from a marketing firm. I think they're based in Florida. But Watershed Communications did a food and beverage survey, and this is really about brand category management. They interviewed 400 millennials, and how often do you get a survey where every single respondent said, yes, he or she frequently purchased foods and beverages based on the brand's reputation for authenticity? Remarkable. Okay, 5 minutes. Wow, I got it really fast, but that's fine. I got a lot of stuff here. It's all good. So I won't spend much time here, but again, we're seeing the same thing. What's once niche is a new normal, real, all natural, fresh, organic, true to mission, culturally accurate, transparency, transparency, transparency. Part of transparency means that people are more likely to you know, scan the barcode and find out where the food actually comes from. They use technology to verify claims. Those of you who were part of the event last night, Mary Hendricks has mentioned something like this. This is from Ian Vassi at the University of Iowa. The local food market is a moralized market where people combine economic activities with their social value. Local food markets more likely to develop where people have a strong commitment to civic participation, health, and the environment. It's sort of a two-way street. You're more concerned about your community, you might seek out local sources, vice versa. Okay. Again, won't spend time on this, but certainly people are looking to support the local economy. We've seen other things to relate to that. I think this is really an important takeaway. Traditionally, we've seen that supermarkets were sort of considered one size fits all. They are trying to position themselves as so-called neutral environments where shoppers could pick from a broad range of product. Today, neutrality doesn't confer any advantage on a retailer, and shoppers are gravitating towards food stores they see as allies and partners in their goals and aspirations. That's for health, it's for sustainability, and they want to create closer connections between shoppers and the food system. And we see this in choices of store. Where do people frequently or almost always visit? You know, it used to be that 100% people would say supermarket. Well, now 83% regular full-size supermarket. Okay, and what's really picking up? At the end, it's still small, but it's really interesting. Your natural and organic store, 17%. Your ethnic food stores, your online shopping. Trust in food stores' ability to deliver local food. You know, farmers market still wins it, not surprising. What's, you know, next to it, natural foods market, next to it, locally owned supermarket, then, you know, way down the pack, big box retailer, then online grocer. So who wins the trust game? Those that are local, those that have personal relationship. Not going to go into the details here as much to point out that among younger millennials, the percentage that prefer to go to a farmer's market, you know, 14%, which is the highest among all of the age cohorts. You will see a real reduction. The red is the traditional supermarket. You can see how that's gone down. That tells you a lot. And the other thing to note here is the natural retailer, the gray, you see the real pickup among the younger generation. Desired fate, and we're gonna have copies available online, I think, of this presentation, so don't worry about capturing everything, though I appreciate the enthusiasm. I know I gotta run through this quickly. A lot of this is some of the things we talked about. What would you like your grocery brands to be? Price fairly, okay, is number one. Be a brand I can trust, number two. And in the middle of the pack, be transparent, be ethical. Be transparent about where ingredients come from. Be authentic. Not contain a lot of ingredients I can't read. My last slide. I think I did it just on time, right? Okay. Everything old is new again. I'd put it this way. I say food shoppers aspire to a more natural and sometimes, frankly, romanticized past. This is a quote from the 2016 Food Marketing Institute U.S. Grocery Shopper Trends Report. My husband comes from an Italian family who cooked and ate together. My mom was young with lots of kids. She did what was easy and cheap. We ate out of boxes and cans. Food was not good growing up. I don't want that for my kids. So I leave you with that. Thank you.